Greetings. This is Animator Tech, Episode 3. I am your host, Terry Kellenich, and first, instead of having the guest I was planning to have on Episode 3, I thought I should put in a caveat, sort of pre-note podcast to give a little bit more explanation of some specific things that I have gone through that will, I would say, frame things more appropriately when I have the next podcast with the guest, which I will not name yet. I'll still keep the suspense going as I move on with the podcasting. I'm improving things. I've changed the equalization of my voice just to, I would say, make it a little bit more accurate, but we'll see how that turns out after the recording. I'd like you to please follow me at Animator Tech on Twitter. I will be focusing, everyone I follow on Twitter will be people that are in the industry or showing great reference for animators, showing some great tools or some great techniques, or perhaps are some independent tutorial creators for Maya, and people that show some great tips. So you can be assured that if you are an animator and you need to find reference or resources to get some answers, I'm going to be following everyone I can find. And so that list will grow. It's very, very small right now. I have a few Twitter profiles that I have to find. I found them before, so I know I'll find them again. And I know of some great quadruped references. So I will add that to my Twitter account shortly. Anyway, on with the podcast here. I will. I think it was on episode 2. I ended with my results from finishing Art Fundamentals and getting direct entry into the Animation Classical course. But what I will do also is give you some details within that course, which are pivotal moments for me, especially now when I look back in time. But at the time, it didn't feel so significant. So the first thing I'll mention is there were small moments where I saw that when I was doing a certain task with very specific things in drawing, so I found a limitation that I had. At least I didn't think much of it then, but every time I needed to do cleanup work, so that's just a fancy name for fine line. It's basically the line work you would see if you were looking at a comic book. You would see that finished line that looks pristine and perfect and has a nice thickness and thick and thin moments on the line, depending on what shape it is helping to describe. That kind of line work for me was very challenging. Now, it's challenging for everyone, let's be honest. But for me, I found myself quite slow at achieving that great, sharp, clean line. And I just amounted it to, well, I just need to draw more. So what I didn't click in right away is the act of drawing requires you precision, pinpoint accuracy from your pencil tip on the page. So that may not seem like a significant thing, but for me, I only have one eye that I can see out of. So, depth perception has always been a challenge for me. Now, when you've lived all of your life with one eye, you don't know what you're missing, right? I've learned to compensate, just like everyone who grows up with a disability. They usually enhance in other ways or find ways to compromise. So for me, much like how it is in traditional animation, depth is defined through movement. If I'm walking down a sidewalk, I understand perspective very well, so I don't have to look down to know where my feet are going to land approximately on that sidewalk, or if I need to reach the next step on a staircase. Um, my brain and my limited vision have worked together to calculate depth in a more as precise as possible way. However, walking is one thing. When you have to do half millimeter accuracy in drawing a line on a piece of paper, that becomes a new level of accuracy that I didn't understand was being hurt directly because I had one eye. So that was, pardon the pun, very eye-opening for me. That hit home when I was doing some, I was able to get some work at the studio I got a co-op placement from. But when I was in Sheridan, I was able to, on the way home, sometimes get some in-betweening work to do. So, well, basically, I would be taking home some drawings, and then at my desk at home, I would be doing some of that work. And then there were times where on the weekends I would then come in and or I think there was some days that I had off once. I think there was one day or something that I had off once in a while or something, and I was able to work at the studio, and there were other in-betweeners there. And what I noticed was everyone was faster than me. Everyone. And I watched how some of them drew their lines. And when I saw how they were just drawing one time and getting that clean line, I was blown away. I needed to use an eraser quite a lot because I would get that line initially maybe, and then it would be inaccurate halfway through, or the opposite. I would land the pencil tip in the wrong spot and then get it in the right spot after. And this was happening almost every time that the pencil touched the paper. I had a situation where there was a missing line that another artist forgot to do when we were combining our work, because sometimes an in-betweener only has the first half of the scene and then someone else has the other half. There was a time where this young lady in-betweener was, she had to just do one line, and she didn't even have the desk. She didn't even put the page on the desk. She just like went on a flat surface and just winged that line perfectly right in front of me, and I couldn't believe it. I was like, I can't do that. I mean, that made me worry a little bit, because this is the only type of work you get as a beginner. You get the in-between work, you get the effects work, you get cleanup, and I was slow. I was not efficient if someone were to track my progress and compare it to anyone else in the studio, I would be last place. That was a very hard for me to register and because you have to remember, I've been drawing every day for like 3 years at that point, and I felt like I'm a rookie of a rookie. So there was a very something I didn't know how to solve this problem. So that was a big concern for me. Now, I had that experience, but I'll mention 2 other experiences during the Art Fundamentals time frame. Within, I was always jealous of the third year animators because they had their own desk and they had their own little mini studio, so to speak. You know, they had all their little toys and trinkets and they basically made their home, and they had a dedicated desk for them, of course. But I would always walk in to that environment to try to talk to some of the animators. There were 2 animators that I got to know. One of them was someone that I also met in the studio when I was doing co-op. His name is Bruno. I'll never forget you, Bruno. So if you ever come across this podcast, do message me so we can reconnect. With Bruno, I was interested in what his short film was about. He was open and he answered questions that I had. But I was also looking to try to participate in some of these third year animators' short films, because the truth of the matter is they do need to get the work done, and sometimes they farm out some of their work, like in-betweening, like cleanup work, to other artists. And I was trying to get my foot in the door with some of these students' films. One thing I'll add to clarify this part of my story is because of the experience I gained at the co-op placement with the camera operation and how pivotal that part of the animation process it is. I mean, that's the only way you get to see your work playing back at 30 frames per second or 24 frames per second. Without that, you don't have a gauge of where you're at. It's very important. It's exactly the same thing as in Maya. You have to play blast and see how your work looks. You can't just stay in Maya while you're animating and just think you're doing the right thing. You need to check your work and check the progress. So because of that, and because of my computer knowledge that I gained from the computer business I had with my brother and business partner, that is, I basically discovered that the computer that I had at home was also very good at capturing animation frames in a custom program that was made specifically for that purpose. I saw that program in use in a studio that I took a tour in, and I bought that software. So it turned out that this, not even an animation student in Sheridan College, had the most advanced computer line testing software that the industry had to offer. So I knew I had something good. I knew I had something new, and I knew I had something revolutionary for that specific part of the animation process, the traditional animation process. I had some ammunition with me when I walked into that third year animation program because I knew some animators would love to take advantage of essentially my free service that I'll be offering them because I want to be a part of their work and I can help them at the same time by me, for example, shooting my own work that they give me, and then they'll see it on VHS tape and then they can critique it from there. So I'm sure none of them would complain because that simply was not available before that technology became at a consumer level accessible. So with that knowledge, I did approach Bruno and I told him that I would love to work on something if he wants to take a chance with me. And he did. He let me work on some fire effects and I think some smoke as well. And it was for one of his layouts. And so I basically took his one layout drawing and I put that in the computer. And then I line tested, or I drew, of course, fire. And because of the technology that I had fire going in several different places on his layout. I was able to zoom in to that one spot and then play that. Zoom into another spot, play that. Zoom into another spot, play that, and then show the whole layout with all of them combined and play it together. So that has never been done before at that time for a student to be able to provide that kind of flexibility. I was more than happy to do that because I felt I was getting more out of it by participating in a third year student's film that I knew it was great. Bruno, I mean, he's such a great animator. I totally looked up to him, and I was so happy to be working on that. So that was while I was in Art Fundamentals. There was another animator that I met, Aubry Mintz. I'm sure we'll connect on LinkedIn, and maybe one of these days I'll meet you in person. I know where you are. Aubry had a very interesting film as well. I loved animals, so his film was, just the subject, just the characters, just looking at a one page of the characters, just, I was sold in terms of interest. And I talked with Aubry a lot. We had some. I wasn't able to participate in working on his film directly, from my knowledge, but more. Let's just say we had a friendship as a result of me popping in there, and I was very interested in his progress as an artist. He was open to show me his life drawing, which was important for me because life drawing was a new concept for me. Seeing a nude model while I'm drawing, that was just such a shock to me because I never did that before. And so now I'm looking at a third year classical animation students work, and it's like, oh, wow, I'm seeing like from the beginning to like the end of some great skill sets there, like the contrast of where I was and where Aubry was at was really great for me to see. And of course, this happened with Bruno as well. I was able to see his work as well. But Aubry caught wind of me mentioning that I do airbrushing. And so this created a very unique situation as, to my surprise, Aubry was doing some part-time work, obviously to help pay the bills and stuff. And he had a project of airbrushing a kid's daycare center wall, and I'll never forget the name. The daycare was called Squids And Squirts, and the wall was an underwater scene, and it was all sorts of squids and fish, and so I helped Aubry paint that wall. I wasn't doing any major work, just the auxiliary stuff and bubbles and seaweed and whatever else, and he was doing the main character work. But we worked together, and I I was so thrilled to be a part of that, of his. This is his journey too. He's trying to survive, and when you're a third year classical animator, your life is animation, and if you're strapped for cash, you gotta somehow make it and not compromise your time too much from the workload that you have. And so I just felt it was such an honor to work on a um, auxiliary project with Aubry. And I'll never forget it. Um, it's a great memory, and I just thought I would like to share that um, with the audience, just so they see a side of me that where there was weakness, where there was exploration in terms of meeting people that I was, looking up to. And I think maybe I'll stop there because I just wanted to mention about the where the disability showed itself. I didn't think much of it, but sometimes that's going to happen to you, where if you have something that's, oh, whatever it is, below average, and it reveals itself within it, and it reveals itself within your getting in the way of your goal, try not to let that dominate your mind, because eventually I found a way around it, but not in the way that you expected. But I then lean towards things that I can do. So for Bruno, working on fire wasn't as much precision required like a character would be for in-betweening or cleanup. So I made a compromise, and it was fine. I thought fire was fun to animate, and I did it. I accomplished that goal, and I did see that those elements put in a line test that he did at the college. So I know he at least liked that part. So just understand that you can work around these things. Well, sometimes you won't be able to, but I just want you to know that the vision wasn't 100% invisible. I said that in podcast 1 on the first episode, but this didn't stop me from doing the best I can with what I have. So that's the moral of this podcast. And with that, I think I should end this story. So the real guest, first guest, will be on podcast 4, and I know you'll like it, and it may be into several parts. We'll see how that goes. If you liked this podcast, I would encourage you, please click the like button, subscribe, and ring that bell on the YouTube channel. And if you would like to comment or ask any questions, please do. I will, if the questions start, piling up, I may even dedicate a podcast to questions and answers about, certain subject matter. And please follow me on Twitter. It's @AnimatorTech. And that's it for now. Thank you very much for your time.